All right, everybody, we are going to go ahead and get started with the webinar today. To those of you who joined us last week, thank you so much for coming back. And for those of you who are new, welcome. We're super excited to have you all here for our second Workplace for Breakfast webinar in the series. My name is Brittany again, and I will be your moderator for the day. We developed this 3-week webinar series to dive into the various implications that COVID-19, also known as the coronavirus, has had on the physical workplace today, tomorrow, and in the future. Today's webinar is hosted on behalf of GM's Strategic Workplace Services Division and will focus on elements of a successful long-term work-from-home program. Before we jump into the presentation, I wanted to quickly go over just a few quick housekeeping notes. Some of you may notice that the invite on your calendar says 2 hours, but this is only a 1-hour webinar. We have already muted all of you, and we ask that you please keep your microphone muted and your video disabled throughout this webinar. If you do have questions, we encourage questions. We love them. We really want this webinar to be very interactive and engaging. Last webinar, we had a ton of great questions. If you look on the upper right-hand corner of your blue jeans, you will see a feature that says chat. And if you click on that, you can either send somebody a direct message or you can type in the everyone box. If you have questions, please type them in the everyone box and I will be tracking them throughout the webinar. We're going to pause midway through the webinar to answer a couple of questions, and then we'll be finishing up the remaining questions at the very end. Again, we welcome questions. We love them. Please ask them. Before we jump in, I just wanted to remind you about who today's speakers are. So today please make sure that everyone's microphones are muted. Thank you. So our speakers today are Durbin and Meagan Boen. Jenny is our Director of Strategic Workplace Services.
She sent it to me. I just clicked on the new link and then I hit,
I just got it.
all right.
I'm getting a little bit of feedback. If everyone could just make sure to mute their microphones, that would be great. Jenny Durbin is our Director of Strategic Workplace Services, and Meagan is our VP of Workplace Excellence. Together, they're an absolute force to be reckoned with. We're super excited to have them share their workplace knowledge with us. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Jenny, and we will dive into today's topic. Over to you, Jenny.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Jenny. For those of you that haven't heard my voice before, we're just going to do a quick recap on what we covered last week and then dive into today's topic. Really, we're talking about a thoughtful return to work. I think everyone previously felt like we were going to be rushed home into an emergency situation, and then we would come right back into the workplace as we knew it. And really what we're discovering, and as time marches on, is that it's going to be a more thoughtful approach, and the impact of COVID-19 is a bit more comprehensive than we had initially expected. So the Herman Miller New Normal Research Team has kind of called it out as a now, near, far approach. And I really appreciate that. I think that kind of gives the tone and the journey that we're on. So last week we covered the now. This week we're going to dive into the near, which is the evidence-based design to inform, and kind of this learn as we go and harnessing the experience and the insights that we've gleaned so far, and use that to our advantage. And so if Meagan will join me, then
Yes.
Yeah, please tell us about last week's
Sure.
place.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you. If this is your first time joining us, thank you for attending. And if you're returning, we appreciate that very much. This was a little bit about what we talked about in our original webinar. It really had to do with place, process, and people. You can see up here in this little diagram, we started to look at the effects of physical distancing on the workplace. We're all starting to think about that as we develop our re-entry plans. So we did share quite a lot of content about that, and then also looking at just hygiene and sanitization and placement and training and how we can ready our environments to prevent the spread of the virus. I'll let Jenny kind of dive into process as she really handled that in our last webinar.
Yeah, so for kind of the process section is really saying it takes a team, it takes a village, it takes the expertise across your entire stakeholder group to come together to create a robust return to work plan. So I talked about establishing a framework for that, and then really using that framework to lead through the change. And then as a supporting mechanism, kind of really taking the time to develop a comprehensive communication plan will help.
I can't promise you. I'm not right on.
Oh, we got a few more people that need to mute their lines. Thank you. And really looking at establish a communication plan that will carry you through really what's going to be the next 1, 2, 3, 5 years as we enter into a new way of working. And then we also talked about people and the celebratory nature of coming back into the workplace, and that we all recognize that there's a purpose for the physical workplace. And although we might have had different experiences, or I'm sorry, a similar experience being rushed into work from home, after that, it's been very unique. So really understanding how people have adapted to change and their acceptance of change in this experience, and just having compassion when we come back into the workplace for those that have had a unique experience. With that, we are going to move into today's conversation around this mandatory work from home experiment. So Meagan, you really had a great framework for today's conversation. Can you tell us a little bit about the why, how, what?
Sure. I think that this work from home experiment is a really great way to put it. We've been thrust into this kind of trial by fire, and there's never been an opportunity like this. So today we want to kind of walk you through why we should learn from this and study it, how you'd go about doing that, and then lastly, what you would do with the information. So for me, the thing that really sticks out in the why is this really is the largest global work from home pilot that we could ever ask for. And we're looking at multiple industries and all different work styles and job roles and levels and tenure, getting the chance to go home and work. And obviously we were thrust into that very quickly, and it may not have been the most ideal situation, but I think there's so much that we can extract from this, so much data from our teams that can help us really kind of have a lens for the future and what maybe our people are thinking and experiencing. So really for me, that's the why in the reason for studying.
Yeah, and Meagan and I are both, our perspective is really around an evidence-based design approach to inform your organization and the unique attributes of your organization. So for us, this is like a bit of a kid in a candy store with being able to harness data and insights like never before. And especially for organizations that have never thought about a work from home program, but have had to do it. There's a new, fresh opportunity here and fresh insight that we should harness and we should really understand. What Meagan,
sorry, Jenny. I wanted to, before we dig into what we're actually experiencing at the moment, I wanted to take a step back and look at where we were before COVID-19, before we even knew that this virus was on the horizon and the impact it would have. So Jenny, when you look at these percentages, what jumps off the page at you?
Yeah. First of all, seeing that the themes that run across the page here are around flexibility and choice and having an option, and that today's workforce and the 6 generations that we've got in the workforce are really leaning into prioritizing the value of flexibility. And so that is a theme that has been building over the last 5 to 10 years for us. And I think now we're just seeing that push forward, and that is even more of a perspective, or an even finer perspective on our plans going forward. So it's a bit accelerated, I think, in the future. We know Workplace is a primary recruiting tool for organizations, and every single talent or individual that I've come across is always asking about flexibility, mobility. So that's a prevalent theme as we continue to progress into the future.
So I think that is an interesting point. I wonder how these percentages will change over time, given that many people that responded to these studies did not have the opportunity to experience working from home or flexibility. So I wonder how after this, these would maybe ebb and flow or increase or decrease. The other thing that pops out to me is the occupancy studies. I mean, we were doing observations and looking at space utilization well before this happened. And even then, most of our spaces were 50 to 60% of the time vacant or underutilized. So that is something to consider, and something that strategists and Herman Miller has done some great work with some technology to really measure that. So I'm excited to see how we further that research moving forward. This is an example of a variety of industries before COVID-19. And this is the percentage at which they worked at home. So we do see a lot of diversity here, and that will be a theme running through this discussion today, is understanding your industry and your job roles and your work styles within your organization, and understanding what is the most efficient and productive way to implement a mobility or flexible or work from home program, or if it makes sense at all. I mean, there's several industries that really can only be productive within their establishment, client-facing, customer-facing, and there's others that tend to be more task-oriented, individual or focused, or even on the more mobile side, that may benefit from that flexibility. So this is, oh, go ahead, Jenny, jump in.
I would just like to layer in the thought here that, you know, you're seeing a wide variety of industries and different percentages of working from home or having flexibility, mobility. So just like to layer in the thought and the idea early on in our conversation that there's different job roles, work styles, or portions of your own organization that really make sense to work, have more flexibility, and others that absolutely need to be present in the primary workspace that the organization provides throughout their job role and their job function. So there's flavors and nuances even amongst organizations that you might not have thought of as a mobile workforce. And that's actually what you're seeing here as well.
Great. So again, why? Well, Jenny and I are here to talk to you about what we believe is the inevitable question. After we start phasing our employees back into the office and the re-entry is taking place, we believe that many of our employees and workers will be asking if they are allowed to continue working from home after COVID-19. We can't control the fact that they will ask that, but we can be prepared to answer. And so, Jenny, you've had a lot of thoughts around how this question is asked and the way that organizations can respond. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, it's a theme. We've talked about it being a theme already, but this mandatory work from home experience is bringing to the forefront the fundamental question that organizations have around, can we be successful and productive if my employees aren't present and in the office where I can't see them? And there's been a conflict here over time between talent and an organization, and it's really being brought to the forefront now. Employees, individuals, the workforce is proving that we can work from home and that we are doing it productively. It does vary. We're going to show you some statistics that show, you know, variance on that, but we're seeing productivity from home. And now employees and individuals are going to expect a comprehensive answer to this question. So organizations that really take the time to formulate their response, to understand the work from home experience that their staff has had, and to formulate a comprehensive answer is going to be crucial. And the organizations that take the time to do that will be the ones that are more resilient, more innovative, pushing forward and thinking through, and won't be caught off guard by the post-COVID-19 workplace.
And just to be clear, this really it's a discussion and sharing ideas today. Jenny and I are by no means on some sort of work from home or mobile flexibility crusade for every workplace. We don't believe in a one-size-fits-all solution. We believe that every organization is unique, and we believe that you should base your decisions on evidence and data in order to make informed decisions. At this time, we're really not we're workplace strategists, but we're not post-COVID-19 workplace experts. I don't really think anyone is at this time. I think that we are learning and experiencing, and now is the time to collect data and learn from this unique experience that we've been handed. And Jenny and I will lean into our expertise when it comes to gathering information, processing, analyzing, and helping our clients develop their own strategy to how they will respond to this pandemic and what it's done to the workplace.
That's a really great segue into how to collect information while employees are still in the home situation and while it's fresh in our minds. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about what tools you can use, what are your opportunities to explore this, and really what we're going to talk about next is ways that you can explore that could be layered together or individually, but we do recommend kind of a combination of things to get a really balanced view and to make sure that that's a comprehensive understanding.
Right.
So the first area, oh, go ahead.
So now is the time. I mean, I think that we need to stress that as we're approaching possibly the tail end of this work from home shared experience and we start to re-enter, now is the time to start talking to your teams while this experience is very fresh in their minds, or while they're still working from home full time.
So the first area to explore is my favorite, which is the conversations with leadership and the business. And leaders of each area of your business or running, certain teams within your organization, they have a keen understanding of their staff, their teams, their skill set, their maturity, level of expertise, and they really understand all that because they're responsible and accountable for delivering on their strategies and their goals and their commitments to the organization. So starting here with a really open-ended conversation is ideal. And we have a few questions here that can kind of provoke the conversation or start the conversation. The intent is to be casual but intentional. You want to learn what they have to say without prescribing the answer for them. So asking questions in an open-ended way is probably going to give you some insights that you would not have otherwise thought to include. And then really taking those conversations and then balancing them with other voices in the organization. So on the next slide, we have a few other areas to tap into for viewpoints and things that will help you comprehensively understand what's working well and what's not working well. Obviously, teams that are struggling and teams that are excelling, you want to know why. Is it the technology? Is it how they collaborate? Is it were they a strong team and a healthy team before and now they are not? Really kind of understanding these aspects will give you insights into what you might need to consider for your own programs. Obviously, you want to talk to those in favor. These are your champions. These are your influencers, your enthusiasts. And having them on your side and as your partner through the conversations and through whatever decisions you make as an organization is really key. You want them there to be the enthusiast and to be that forward thinker and partner for you. And then lastly, looking at those that are opposed to change or opposed to a workplace shift. These conversations often are the hardest to have. They are oftentimes negative and highly critical. But I will tell you that every time I've sat down and really honed in and sought to understand the opposition, I have come away with some really amazing insights that have made my programs and my solutions that I've offered stronger. And you might never get those that are opposed on your side 100%, but they will come along with you if you take them with you and if you pay attention and value their insights into your program. So I really strongly recommend to not be afraid of that conversation. I think you'll find it would actually be very fruitful for you. And then lastly, I would just suggest that balancing out what you hear and playing back the different things that you've heard from these different voices and from these different groups will give you an insight into understanding if whatever program you're looking at or mobility concepts you're looking at are organizationally are directed towards the organization, or if it's really around something that's specific to a team or department. And that'll really give you a balanced view overall. So now Meagan is going to take us into a few of the other tools that she has worked with clients for many years and has seen the value and the insights that have come from that.
Great, thank you. Going back to voices, I think this is sort of a good segue into that. We're all familiar with electronic surveys and interviews, and I just think it is a fabulous tool to hear the voices of your employees within your organization and give you an opportunity to ask very specific questions around very specific topics. And depending on whether or not you keep the survey anonymous, it's truly up to you. But I think that anonymous factor sometimes lets those that may not have been comfortable sharing their true opinion kind of come to light with that. What I like about the analyzing of surveys is that we get to see how different departments think and how the organization is thinking as a whole. And so it gives us this great insight to see where maybe consensus already exists on a certain topic. But where I really like to focus the energy is where we see the gaps and the split opinion. And I think that's when you can start to bring in smaller subject matter experts within your organization or even outside of your organization to really tackle some of the misalignment or difference of opinions on things that are occurring in your organization or even things that you're looking to change. This is where I think that your strategy and your plan and even your change management approach starts to come to life. And really bringing those focus groups together, you can do it virtually. That's very simple to do in our current environment, all at home. But I do think that this is an extra layer to the survey, and I encourage you studying things from multiple perspectives. With that, I also encourage ethnography studies, which sounds scientific, but really the way I've done it with my team, and these pictures here are examples of my team working at home, is I've used this kind of scrapbook technique, and I've asked them to document through pictures and daily journals what their experience is like at home. Any image that shows how they're working and the elements around it, and there's so much that jumps off the page for me here. We see a variety of at-home work environment, sitting at the dining table with a laptop, maybe not the most ergonomic situation, but making do. We have children, we have animals. I love the picture of the hammock and the person with the laptop. To us, a hammock is like the universal symbol for relaxation. So that kind of layered with the laptop and just looking at this intersection of home life and work, it really speaks to me in terms of, do our employees have the right environment to work in? Is this conducive for productivity? How are they feeling about this experience? And I can tell you that given my team, they have pretty much the same job roles and duties and work styles, but they've had varied experience within this work from home pilot experiment, if you will, that we've had for the last 2 months. Some of them report feeling more focused and productive than they ever have before, and others cannot wait to get back into the office because they have so many distractions and other responsibilities at home. So I think that's really something that these surveys and focus groups and different types of ethnography studies that you can do to kind of collage and layer together to understand, even if we have a specific work style or responsibility, that environment at home or at work or in between really does dictate how productive we are. And so you have to ask yourself as an organization, am I willing to dig into that home work environment or even offer that? And it's not one size fits all, like we said, but this is one thing that we can extract from this experience and use to inform future ideas around programs for our organizations. So with that, we've also been talking to a lot of our people and our clients, and I think this is important to do as well. When you're having conversations, ask them how this experience has been. You'll be surprised at what you learn from their responses.
Yeah, and these are specific answers when Megan and I have asked our questions to our internal teams, our clients, our peers and partners. So this is actual real-time information from some of the recon that we've been doing. I love the comment around harmony of work and life and the fact that we're multifaceted. The scrapbooking exercise that Megan just talked about shows how work and life are truly intersecting right now. But one thing that I've noticed that I think is a beautiful thing to come out of this experience is that in our past lives, if we were working remotely and your kid or the doorbell rang or the cat ran across your laptop, that you would apologize. I'm sorry. And that you would feel like it's this, strike on your professional integrity and that you're showing up for work. And I think that we're really starting to see and have an understanding that we're all multifaceted and we all have responsibilities and life in and out of the office. And just because they intersect doesn't mean we're no less responsible or no less professional across the various aspects of our life. That was one thing that's been a nice aha for me out of the last 6 or 7 weeks.
I really love this idea of the intersection of work and life. I think for many years we have been experiencing that, more so work intersecting into our personal lives and duties and experiences. And a lot of that has to do with, technology. It's hard to turn it off and unplug. And I think that's been an accepted part. And the reason that there's been a lot of talk about work-life balance, I think this work from home experience has shown us how life has really interjected itself into our daily work. And we're starting to see different facets of our people and different depths that we were unaware of before. So I think that's been a really great experience, and it's actually created a deep connection, maybe even deeper connection than people may have had in the physical office. It's allowed us to see inside of their lives and view them as more well-rounded individuals. So that's been fun, and I do, from my experience, feel like it's brought some of our teams closer. The other thing I loved talking to people about was the fact that this experience has taught them to work differently and smarter and use tools that they did not use before. So a lot of us had different types of technology that we may not have been comfortable with, but in this sort of forced remote working, we've had to adapt and overcome. And so I think that's a positive piece that has come out of this experience, and it has stretched a lot of our individuals within the organization.
And I would just tap onto that before we move into your survey results, is that the idea that we're seeing teams that were healthy and working really well together and really integrated well, transitioning nicely and bridging nicely, just as much as we've seen teams struggle. So there's a positive message in here that a healthy team can stretch and grow in different ways that we might not have otherwise understood without giving them the opportunity to prove it and to show it.
Exactly. And we also talked to some industry leaders as well, just a few articles and webinars that we've been reading and talking to our peers. So this is what they're saying, and I think a lot of this speaks to me. What about you, Jenny? What do you get from these quotes?
100%. Again, nobody's an expert, but we're all thinking and having these, thought-provoking conversations on what does it mean and where is it going. And I really love the comment around the new workplace will be the old workplace redefined. We've seen how technology is pushing us forward and pushing us into new ways of working and new concepts and definitions around what it means to work and where we work. And so I just think that's going to be that much more accelerated. And, Megan and I have talked a lot about this. We really feel like it's a workplace renaissance. We are going to see fresh ideas, fresh concepts, innovation in a way that we haven't seen in some time. So that's really exciting, and that's a great forward-looking outlook to have. Megan, what?
Well, I mean, the office is and always will be a facility based on change. I think that workplaces are forever evolving and transforming with culture and society and technology. And I think that this experience has just accelerated that change. And I do agree it is a renaissance. I mean, people have been talking about reimagining all these things, but I think that we'll be seeing a lot of different technology and innovation within our future workplaces faster than it would have occurred due to this pandemic. So with that, we do have some survey results from the survey that we sent out prior to this webinar. Thank you all for participating in this. It's really fun for Jenny and I to look at these results. We typically are working with one organization at a time and understanding diversity and variety within their single team. So it is interesting to question multiple organizations of different industries and sizes to see how these results are coming in. So it's just this really nice cross-section of what you're all experiencing. So the first one that we'd like to talk about is how often did you work from home prior to COVID-19? So this is our result here, and Jenny and I found this to be pretty compelling. To start with, the majority, 33%, did work from home, approximately 1 day a week. And then the other majority in this pie chart here, the answer is never. So it feels like this one or the other. And then we have this one that represents more so working after hours at home, not necessarily during work hours.
And I think what this whole first question is really suggesting is that there's obviously a wide variety, and again, we're going to talk about that like continuously. There's no one way to do it, but really showing that there's two extremes with a couple flavors in there. So there's really not a holistic view of a more comprehensive work from home or flexibility and mobility. It's one extreme or the other, and that's really where our nation has been in terms of organizations that feel very much compelled to offer this holistically versus those that do not, and there kind of is no in between.
Right. So the other question that I like here is the benefits you experience working in the office. And the majority answer here was connection to my leadership and team, social connection, and proper individual workspace. I think that's, oh, go ahead, Jenny.
Oh, just when you combine that with one of the results on the next page, ergonomics is a huge issue or a huge area of concern. I think people are very much aware of that, and very much aware of what might be working for them and not, and what they get out of the workplace. So I felt that that was a really telling tale for us. And then the other piece is around recognizing that connection to my leadership and team and to the social element speaks volumes around us as and our professional integrity of wanting to be part of that and knowing that that's crucial in where we work. And I think organizations should take comfort in the fact that their staff, their talent that they've hired is aware of that and knows that the physical workplace environment and the people that they're surrounded by are crucial to being part of the organization and to the work that we do. So I think that's a takeaway for organizations that are concerned about that. It's like your people are already saying that they recognize the physical workplace is a point of connection and wanting to connect to that. And so there's a lot of comfort that can be gained there.
I think that this also speaks to the imbalance that we are experiencing as in terms of working from home.
Yep.
So if we look at this question and this, ergonomics is huge, and then the connection to the organization or leadership and the ability to unplug after work. I think that a lot of workers prior to this spent all of their working hours and time within an office. And maybe craved a little bit more balance. And now we're spending all of our time trying to work out of our homes, and definitely struggling with the place aspect of working out of your home and maybe not having the correct ergonomics. I saw that with my team in their photos, and they are highly task oriented and heavy computer users. So I can imagine that this has been challenging for them. But I think it's about finding that balance between work, home, and the in-between spaces. And I think once we can even that out, find some harmony between those areas, that we'd see more harmony in these types of percentages.
Really well said, Megan. We're at about 10:40, so I think we should move into Q&A and take a couple questions.
All right, let's do that. We'll turn it over to Brittany.
Hi. Yeah, I've been monitoring some of the questions here in the chat, and I've gotten a few great questions from Candace. One of the questions that I've received is, do you believe that this experience sort of forces managers and leaders to put more trust in their employees?
I'm sure Jenny and I both have answers to that. I think that I don't like to say forces per se, but I think that we've been forced in a situation where we really had no other choice but to trust our employees. And it's funny that that's the question, because we were going to talk about this question in our survey, that I feel my employer trusts me to work remotely. And 49% strongly agree that they are trusted, and 44% agree that they are trusted. That's a very high percentage. And I think that's one of the greatest things that we've learned from this experience, is that a lot of the people on our staff that didn't have the option to work from home have been extremely productive and connected. And I think that it had a lot of trust and confidence has been born out of that situation.
Completely agree. I couldn't add on to that if I tried.
Thank you. So one question that I actually have is, we talk a lot about flexibility in the workplace in terms of the physical workplace, as far as working from home, working in the office. Do you think we will see, or should organizations begin to pivot in terms of offering flexible schedules too. So whether that's a 410 or a 980, or maybe, people with kids that need to like go run a quick errand, or, I don't know. That was kind of a question that I had.
Yeah, I'll take that one. I think that's a great question. We have been seeing, and there's been a lot of conversation around the redefinition of core work hours, or I need to work 8 hours. So there is aspects of the quote unquote 8 hour workday or the core business hours being tied back to the Industrial Revolution, and having staff or workers on site for their 8 hours. And that actual original 8 hours was intended to protect the worker, not to extend them into 12, 16, 18 and abuse their workers. And I could go into a rabbit hole on that, but that is one of the original reasons why we have an 8 hour workday. But now if you translate that into today's modern worker, so many of us are knowledge workers, and technology has enabled us to be more flexible and to define when I work and how I work and when am I most productive. I know quite a few people who get their creative juices flowing 11 p.m. and later. But I would just counterpoint that and say, at the end of the day, the organization has a strategy, and you've been hired by that organization to deliver on a certain role and a certain goals. So really aligning that flexibility to what the organization needs is crucial. But I do think offering some flexibility there, I think we'll see that as well. The short answer is yes, I think we'll see that.
Thanks, Jenny. That's all the questions I have for now, but I just want to encourage everyone, if you have any questions, please drop them in the everyone chat. I'm monitoring them. And as we approach the end of our webinar, we'll have time for just a couple more quick questions. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, Brittany.
Great questions. I love those. Okay, so now we're going to move into the what do I do with it? So you've spent all this time, valuable time, gathering information, having these provoking conversations, really, well, stirring the pot, but in a good way. So what do you really do with all that information? So we're going to talk a little bit about how to apply the people side to the physical workplace changes that you might anticipate or start to see. So to me, from my experience and the way I've always approached the strategies and the work styles and how people work, is taking all that people information and combining that with some really deep analysis around the workforce diversity and the job functions and the roles and the work styles that lend themselves to being on site, to being present, versus those that can be more flexible. And then really there's a lot of work here to understand what your maybe rebalance of a daily occupancy might look like in the workplace, and what the landscape of the office floor plate actually looks like. So you might discover and start to see patterns from your conversations around groups that feel highly mobile, but want to come together in a teaming space. Or you might understand that you need more hoteling. Those are aspects leaning into mobility. But equally, you could find that there's teams that need to be present 100% on site, but they don't have the right space to support them. So really looking at the layers of people information on the overall approach and thought around a mobile workplace program or flexibility, and combining that with the diversity to understand ratios and kind of rebalancing your occupancy plans will impact your physical workplace. The other area obviously is the home. And again, that ethnography study says 1,000 words. Every organization, I mean, actually, if you do that study yourself, you'll see how your employees are working from home. Every organization has to decide if they're going to offer a certain kit of parts or subsidize a kit of parts, to make the home environment more supportive of a proper work style and proper ergonomics. So that's just something that you're going to have to consider, and another added value of doing, say, a scrapbooking project. And then really moving into infrastructure, which is the other element of the changes to the workplace. I'm not an expert in tech, software, or security, but I've partnered with expertise in those areas, really in order to make sure that whatever changes to the workplace you're offering or whatever mobility concepts you're offering are really supported with the right digital tools, with the right software, and maybe cloud storage or certain apps that make it easier and bring about an ease into a more mobile workforce. And then really around digital security and understanding what you need to have in place to protect your internal networks and your IP. All of those have to come together holistically and collectively to really make a comprehensive program. And then lastly, I would just suggest that any organization is probably already looking at these things, but looking at them with an intent to be future thinking and future proofing in a way is really where we're headed. So paying attention now will really help you in the future as your workforce and as your organization evolves. And then lastly, on this page is really around performance measures. We're in a pilot right now. It's not an ideal pilot. So finding the right group that can pilot a new way of working and gaining those insights, and then doing the pulse checks to see how it's working will help fine tune and get you to a place that says yay or nay, this works for us, this doesn't work for us. All right, so I think I've talked a lot. There's a lot to that area. It takes a lot there. So there's a lot more to be said there. Another rabbit hole, if you will.
So something that you mentioned in that last slide was the workforce diversity, and we've been talking about that a lot today. But that really has to do with your work styles and the impact your work styles have on place. So I think one of the really important action steps you can take if you really want to start thinking about your strategy and potentially changing it or making it more flexible, you have to identify the type of workers that you have. I'd say most organizations have a variety of work styles depending on job function and role. And so what we're showing here are 3 different work styles, resident, blended, mobile, and it's really a spectrum. I mean, we've made this a gradient on purpose because I think that a lot of us kind of fall in between one of these roles. So as an organization, I think piloting and understanding your program will help you define and support those workers that aren't so easily defined in one of these work styles. But one way to start thinking about it for resident workers, for example, and when we say resident, we don't mean at their home residence per se. It's just that they are the type of worker that is highly focused, a lot of times working individually with very few interactions, and they'd probably prefer not to have many interruptions throughout the day. So this is a very task-based, highly routine, process-driven worker. We feel that the ideal workspace for this type of individual would be pretty secure, ergonomic, void of most distractions and interruptions. Most of their interaction and collaboration with others is definitely planned. This isn't necessarily the person that is having those impromptu engagements throughout the day. So again, an assigned workplace within the physical office or the home, either one, I think this type of worker can function very well within their residence. The only concern is their connection to the culture and the mission of the organization. I think that it is very easy to lose sight of these workers because if they are with outside of the office, just because their work it tends to be very individual. One way that you can measure productive with this type of worker, I feel it's probably the easiest one to measure that productivity due to the quality and the content and quantity of the deliverables they produce. I mean, that really is what shows their productivity, and it is quite easily measured. When we get into blended and mobile, that is a little bit different. I'd say a lot of us would classify ourselves as this sort of blended work style where we definitely have a good amount of deliverables and task and focus that we need to accomplish throughout the day, but we find ourselves in a lot of meetings, in a lot of collaborations. We may be individuals that share out information to our greater organization, are involved in training, though interruptions and impromptu conversations, serendipitous exchanges, those are encouraged for this blended employee because typically they're sharing that information. So one way that we can measure the productivity of these individuals is their team alignment, their team reaching goals, and the transfer of information and mentorship and growth within the departments that they may lead. As far as impact on space, I think this is a person that can do very well in more of an open, exposed environment within the office, maybe even a smaller footprint, because they are kind of bouncing around to different settings in the landscape. Then we go into mobile, and this is that person that, again, highly collaborative, very much sharing information, connecting with probably clients and maybe other work sites on a regular basis. I think they do well in combined public spaces within the office because when they're typically there to meet and share ideas and innovate and collaborate. I think a home office for the amount of focused work they do is fantastic, or even a very reduced footprint within a corporate or workplace facility. So that's just a very high level. I think when Jenny and I were talking about this before, she's like, this is its own webinar. So I think we could definitely spend a lot of time and really dive into the different points on this spectrum. But I encourage you to think about your teams, think about their roles, understand what they're engaged in, and think about how that can impact your space moving forward.
And before we move into the next slide, I just want to point out here that this is alluding to different types and styles of mobility. And when we talk about flexibility and choice, and we call this webinar a work from home webinar, we're really talking about flexibility and choice and spectrum. And actually, an organization might find that everybody needs to be on site, but they're highly collaborative or they're highly blended on site. And that just means there's a variety of choices and spaces to work in, but you're still present on the physical location of the organization. So it's not an extreme one or the other. I'm either in the office or not. No, you can be highly mobile on site, on campus, on your floor. And that's another flavor of what mobility and choice could look like for you. So we're going to move into the holistic look of a work from home program, but I am going to point out that it's about 10:56 right now. In the interest of the last few slides that we have, we're not going to rush through. We're going to take our time to take you through that information. So we do understand if you have to drop right now, please leave your questions with Brittany, and we can follow up with you, but we'd love for you to continue on maybe 10 past the hour so that we can really wrap up this webinar holistically for you. And we really appreciate your participation and presence today.
Yes.
Okay. A holistic work from home flexibility program, it is complex. It's the intersection of all of these things that we've been talking about coming together to support each other and to support the organization and the worker. And an added element to this, and what really sustains whatever program you choose to enact, is the education element. So policy and guidelines where leadership, HR, your people leaders when you do finally come to a statement or a agreement on what's right for your organization, making that statement or that policy and the guidelines that support that clear to all levels of the organization, everyone, will be crucial, because you want your program to be, whatever answer you have, you want it to be holistic and you want it to be comprehensive. The next piece is agreement. And really what I'm talking about here is, if you decide to enact a work from home program or a mobility program, and it's voluntary or discretionary, then you might want to set up agreements between the organization and the individual, where they understand clear expectations, maybe around those flexible work hours, maybe around adhering to ensuring that they have childcare or family care addressed so that they can be present. And then lastly, training in obviously any new software tools and tips, training for managers to know how to lead distributed teams, and then training for new hires who are coming into your organization and helping them understand the culture and what this program actually looks like. That will sustain your program over time. Mm-hmm. And then Megan, I know you have so many insights as well, so if there's anything you'd like to add in here, I'd love to hear it.
I think it's, we've been calling it, again, the work from home program, but it's about discovering what makes sense for you, your organization, your workers. And this is just the intersection of everything coming together in order for it to be successful and productive. But really, this is a journey, and we are learning as we go. And right now, at this very moment, I think most of our organizations are looking at implementing their re-entry plan, maybe starting the first phase of that. So I think that's where a lot of time and energy is spent. I would suggest conducting some work from home experience studies now. Just learn all that you can. You may not be sure what you want to do with it at this phase, but grab the data when it's available, because I don't know if we'll ever have this experience again. We certainly hope that we don't, but out of this pandemic came a great opportunity to learn about our workers and how they've adapted to the sudden work from home requirement. So then analyzing and processing that evidence. So if we look at these three stages, I feel like that's kind of where we are in the now and the near. And then as we move a little bit to the far, we're completing our re-entry plan. Hopefully it's very successful, and we have our employees coming back, and we're getting the questions about, can I work from home sometimes, or flexibility, or what does that look like? So that's when you're really developing that pilot for the workplace strategy approach, if you plan to change things or not. That will be a learning as you go base on this timeline, if you will. And then I think that after the dust settles and we live here for a while, we can really start to see patterns and impacts that has on our space. And at that time, I would suggest doing, utilization studies, incorporating some technology, observations to really understand, are there greater decisions that need to be made? How has this pandemic affected our workplace, and what decisions should we make around real estate or workers? And that's when I think we're all going to get to see how this post-pandemic workplace starts to shape. But until then, again, we keep saying it, we're learning as we go, and we want to be here to help you along the way with certain tools and the ability to help analyze and process to really help you understand how to make some great decisions moving forward.
Excellent. And that's really like this last piece around space utilization. And then this page, it's really talking about landmarks of what a modern workplace actually looks like, is starting to segue into our third webinar, which will be what is the future outlook post COVID-19, when we've refound that balance and that harmony. So I would just put this thought out there around considering all the different places that you work. And we've been talking about this. This has been moving in this direction for the last 10 years, but now seeing what a holistic work environment might look like, and it is valuable for us now. When we were talking about this, Megan and I were going back and forth around this idea and our awareness of different people working with different work styles and the right spaces that support them. And we often do that inside a floor plan and inside a floor plate. But what if we took that up to the 30,000 foot level and said, what are the ideal attributes that support certain work styles outside of the floor plate? And so you can kind of see we've listed out some of the major attributes that you get by working from home or working in your office or working in the in-between, which could be on site as well as outside of either arena. And how these three intersect and layer over each other is, I think, where we're headed long-term as a workplace strategy future idea. The last thing I'll point out here is we put convenience under each of them. And we did that a bit intentionally because we all experience convenience in each of these areas. And that goes back to that harmony and fullness of who we are and what we have to accomplish and the responsibilities, both personally and professionally. So taking that idea, leaning into that and exploring that for the future is valuable, right? And I think this is where we're headed. And that kind of wraps us up. I think we did it. Yep. Only
Yes,
4 minutes over. Yep. So we will move into Q&A now. Brittany's back on, and she's going to run a few questions for us. And we're hoping that you can stick around for a few minutes. If not, we will make it available.
Yes, thank you all.
Yeah, thank you very much, Megan and Jenny. That was amazing. I had a couple of questions that came up. If you guys have a few moments to hang out, we'd love to answer some of the questions I saw pop up on the chat. And thanks to those of you sharing your thoughts on the work from home experience. It's awesome to just see the different perspectives. So one question I have is a few people have asked if they're interested in running a post COVID-19 workplace study or survey to their employees. Do you have a suggestion on how they can go about that and the best way to handle that?
Absolutely. We talked about it earlier. We pulled questions from our comprehensive survey to tap into your knowledge and your experience. So we have a survey, and we have different offerings to meet your needs depending on the organization. So we just suggest that you reach out to Megan and myself directly, or you can go through Brittany via the webinar link to speak with us, and we can connect with you on what's the right survey tool and the right approach for you. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think surveys are a great place to start. It's simple, and the results are just a wealth of knowledge, very eye-opening and compelling. So we've got surveys, and yeah, like Jenny said, just reach out, and depending on your organization and situation and your re-entry plans, we can kind of give you some personal advice on what we would suggest for you to start looking into that.
Yeah, and then just to provide everyone with a general email address, marketing@GMBI will get your email to the right person. So just for one super quick email if you don't have a personal connection at GM. All right, so another question that I had was, you guys earlier mentioned something about a workplace renaissance, and I just love that because renaissance by definition is a rebirth. And I definitely think that we will see a rebirth. But can you expand just quickly on what you mean by that?
Yeah, Megan, why don't you take this one? This is really eloquent. Mm-hmm.
I think that we've been hearing about reimagining and all of those things, which it absolutely is that. But when we were talking about Renaissance, we actually started with it's a rebirth. And I think when you think about a birth, it's a new beginning. It's an extremely life-changing, impactful event. And I think that we've just had a life-changing, impactful event where all of our workers, within a very limited amount of time, had to go home and work. And we had to scramble to get that technology together and adapt and overcome. And when we come back, it's like we won't be the same because we'd never had that experience before. So to me, it is sort of a rebirth. It's a new outlook based on a life-changing event.
And I would just add on to that, when you think about Renaissance, there were new ideas. I think of art, right? So there was new artists and new views and pushing boundaries and not doing things the way they were before, and seeking fresh insight and seeking new ways of doing things. So that's my hope, and that's my outlook, is like, what are the new ways of working, and to not be tethered to previous ideas in the past.
It's such a time of innovation and creation, and it's happening based on a need that we have. So all of our great designers and scientists and doctors and innovators, they're working feverishly to try to solve this issue. And for the first time in a long time, design and choices aren't being based on what is popular or what is trendy or, what whoever is doing at the moment. So I think that also ties very closely to Renaissance, like you said, Jenny. I mean, it's the lights have come on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So good things ahead, really.
Thank you, guys. I have two more quick questions. One question was, do you believe an outcome of this experiment, work from home experiment, will result in people being able to move through their lives as whole people more seamlessly without judgment from managers, leaders, and colleagues?
Yes, that's my hope. That is my hope. I know, being part of an organization in my past life and being part of this organization, that my professional integrity is going to cause me to show up every single day for my role and for my organization and for my clients. So there's an aspect of that is 100% around I will be present and I will limit distractions and I will make it as a positive work experience that I can. However, acknowledging or being able to say my kid's in the background, or I need to go to soccer practice, but I'll be on my phone. Like, I think that there is going to be, and there already is, more of an awareness of that right now at all levels, because it's impacted everyone equally in that regard.
I definitely hope that is the case. I think that's what we're evolving towards. I think this has accelerated it. And I think that sometimes the standard work hours, like Jenny had talked about in our first Q&A break, and the rigidity of that is sometimes counterproductive to the multifaceted lives that we lead. And some of us may be more productive if we had more ability to be flexible and remote. It's not for everyone, and it's not for every role. Or for every industry. It's just not. I mean, some positions just wouldn't be productive in that style. But I do believe that this experiment and situation will shed light on that, and it has proven that we can be productive with work and life intersecting at once.
Wonderful. And then the last question that I had was, this might be getting a little bit into human resources, but how do you develop a strong culture when people are working in all different places and on all different schedules? How to kind of keep people connected and build a strong organizational culture on that?
Yeah, that's a complex answer with multiple integrating pieces. I 100% believe that it starts with leadership and their messaging and their committing to the message and committing to a new way of working. So say it is mobility, or say it is we embrace connection and collaboration, or whatever that value is. It has to start with the leadership. It has to be conveyed and communicated across a wide variety of channels and consistently. And then the leadership that you hire and every person that you hire needs to embody that. So there's a strong element of HR and talent recruitment looking for people that are aligned to the organization's mission and culture. And then,
I think, oh,
yeah, go
sorry.
ahead, Megan. No, go ahead.
Well, I think that's really critical, and then there's just some things that you can do daily. Um, I know that, well, I do still believe the office has a place, and we need to come together and connect, and we need to see each other's faces, and that space needs to embody the company's culture and mission. But as a company and as teams, you have to stay connected every single day. And throughout this experiment, these past 2 months, every single department in our organization has a meeting virtually with their entire team at 8 o'clock in the morning. They didn't do that before this happened. Well, I guess we had implemented that, but a lot of people are doing that, and they didn't do that before this happened. My design team across 3 locations is communicating more holistically than they ever had before because they started using a lot of the virtual tools that we've had, but just it wasn't top of mind. So they are reporting that they do feel a little bit more connected. But I think if you are going to allow people to be out of the office or in the office at different times, I think that you have to have these standing connection points that happen on a regular basis in order to stay aligned. I think that is crucial to the success.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. That's all the questions that I had.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining. We really enjoyed this discussion and building the information to share with you. So we are hopeful and looking forward to seeing what happens next. And thank you for your time today. We hope you found it valuable.
Thank you all for your time.
And then, one final plug that I was going to make is that our last webinar in this series will be on May 20th. So we hope that you can all join us. We'll be sending out a link. If anybody has any thoughts or feedback, please feel free to email that to us at marketing@gmbi.net, or if you had a question that didn't get answered today. We're so thankful that you guys all came, and we're looking forward to seeing you guys on the next one.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.